My wife and I love Sam's videos. In fact, she is the one who showed me some of his videos. So when I heard recently that he released a book available in either paperback or Kindle version, I knew I had to buy it. If you don't know who Sam is, he's a stickman YouTuber who makes video essays about the weirder side of ancient history, with a tone that is as much educational as it is comedic. Pretty funny guy, honestly. A lot of people know him on the internet, and now you do too. So I bought his book, Still Lost: Tales from 28. The cover seems symbolic, alluding to both questions and love. I could have just read the Kindle version for free, sure, but not only do I love physical media, but Sam himself recommended the physical book due to some of the unorthodox typography and formatting he uses in this book. On the back cover are some critic reviews from beta readers, you know, as opposed to alpha Chad readers. Now it says for me in the script to read some of these, the mix of dark humor, wild ideas, and human messiness kept me turning the pages. As a passionate sci-fi short story reader, this is exactly what I was looking for from a read. The premise of this story is a bit strange. For example, one scientist bemoans the plight of corn as though he's never eaten a hot dog. It just feels off. That was actually kind of funny. That's my genuine reaction, by the way. This is me like reading them for like the first, maybe second time, but I don't remember what these say. I disagree strongly with whatever this quote is attached to. That's kind of funny. So already it's starting off on a humorous first foot. Dark humor and sci-fi sci-fi elephants. I don't think there's any sci-fi elephants in this. Dark humor and sci-fi elements are alluded to in the contents of the 255 pages of this book. The book consists of 10 different sections, 8 being story related, and 2 are meant for after the story is finished. Each story is about 30 pages long regarding most of the chapters, so it's not a huge time commitment if you're sectioning out the stories per reading session, which is what I tried to do. This was only supposed to take me a week, and it's been like a month since the last video. Oops! The script says, so it should take me about a week to finish right now. No, it's taking me about a month once again. The foreword is 3 pages of me realizing this entire book is going to be read in Sam Minella's voice. So hopefully an audiobook will be published so that way you can all share in my delusion.
I say this because the way in which the foreword is written feels like one of his YouTube scripts due to the humor and references, which honestly is a good thing. It reveals that each story is about an American in the future found by way of a dumpster floppy disk at the library. Whether this is a literal happenstance or symbolically metaphorical, the computer he is using to read the floppy disk literally or symbolically connects to his body. You'd think a foreword would be the author giving a note about the book you're reading, but instead we just jump right into the sci-fi, which is such a great idea. My consciousness was instantly ripped from my body and propelled into a series of bizarre, detailed visions. Only moments passed in real time. I experienced many months originally lived by individuals who, I came to discover, have yet to be born. I didn't just see what they saw, their thoughts and emotions passed through me as well, with enough realism that they were indistinguishable from my own. He sees from the perspectives of people who aren't even living yet, and this section sets up those stories that the book is about. It's very Black Mirror, but like the good seasons of Black Mirror. Maybe this is controversial, but I think every season of Black Mirror is a good season, and apparently that is a bad opinion. The disc ejects itself, sprouts legs, and runs away. Man, talk about a cyber chase. So while the author has no physical evidence of these stories anymore, since he quite literally destroyed the evidence, and after making fun of footnotes with a funny joke, we finally reach the prologue. However, before we dive deeper into this book, I have my first theory regarding this work of art. I was thinking, what if Sam A. Miller and Sam O'Nella are 2 separate people? In the book, Sam Miller literally connects a computer to his brain with a cord through his nostril and dumpster dives in fast food parking lots. Sam O'Nella is a YouTuber with millions of views per video. Suffice to say, unless Sam O loves the occasional treasure hunt behind eating establishments, Sam A is recounting these stories, hence the Sam A. Miller as the author of the book, the person who is telling us his account of these visions he's received from the library computer. Sure, it could be a pen name, or even Sam's real name, but once we take into account the foreword of the book, it makes sense that Sam A could be a separate character from Sam O, making Sam A the narrator of this book, not Sam O.
a tale from 2078, also known as Fiat Strepitus. I've never said that out loud before.
28 pages of General Morris's perspective of how, for the past 25 days, multiple identical entities appeared across the globe, aka this thing on the cover. Touching it was impossible since it would repel anything that tried to make contact with it. Until one day when a kid in London kicked it. In a flash, a tentacle swooped down to wrap itself around the offending leg. The boy's smirk dissolved into horror and he screamed as slowly, mechanically, said leg bent backwards at the knee until his toes touched his stomach. Oh, that is brutal. But also revealing how, in this story at least so far, there are horror elements. Dad enraged, he threw a stone at the entity only to lose his life with the very same rock he threw a few seconds later. The entity laid roots written with very descriptive language regarding the way in which the overgrowth infected the city with its destruction. Since I grew up Christian, and still am, my immediate thought was something like the rumor weed from the Larry Boy episode, or, for a more modern example, an episode of the Harley Quinn show where poison ivy overwhelms the town with her plants. It doesn't just lay roots, but also emits radio signals, so along with being a horror of sight, it's also one of sound. And different parts of the entity blared different frequencies. It's like if Siren Head was more of a siren body. Power lines and fiber optic cables, however, were not affected, the only lines of communication usable in the radius of the entity, which meant something even more terrifying. The internet was down. Flights were affected, a few hospitals and fire stations got swamped with people attempting to make sense of the current situation, while others decided to use this doomsday to their advantage in a myriad of ways, both positive and negative. Over the next few days, no matter what artillery they threw the entity's way, nothing seemed to work. It always retaliated when attacked, so then came new strategies, such as continuing to attack it with bigger guns and bombs. The entity was neutral the entire time. Sure, it grew roots everywhere, which caused some destruction, but it was no different than a plant laying roots. This plant was just vastly bigger, and there were multiple across the globe. So what does America do? Shoot it, obviously. There's gotta be some form of commentary here, right? After weeks of planning, as the entity was stationary and setting up an elaborate chaotic plan to trick the entity, all of a sudden, it starts to walk and speak. Turns out their species interfered with multiple key points of Earth history to prevent nuclear war. We then get pages of an expedition dump regarding these entities and how it ties in with the cautionary tale of unchecked and unregulated AI usage. I'll be honest, this specific story was good, or really good actually, until we got to the part where the entity just spent countless paragraphs detailing his race and why they are there and how messed up the humans are. We already knew in the subtext that humans are the real monster due to how many weapons they used against this creature, and the creature was merely defending itself. Basically, the entities wanted to give humans a vibe check, and they failed so bad that they finally just directly spoke to them and were like, okay, now this is actually how you solve these issues with AI and climate change and so on and so forth. Speaking of the entity, I think the cover would have looked better if it were just the entity instead of all these words cluttering the front, but maybe that's just me.
At the end of the prologue, we learn the name of the entities, the Xenos. Totally not commentary about xenophobia, as we'll probably get to later.
A meeting room, a front desk, interviews. At first, you're not sure what's going on until we read about a heart-shaped nightstand. A biologist and a Xeno have a conversation in this very room. The Xeno explains that this is the perfect place to collect human samples of all kinds. Meanwhile, the biologist is here to better understand Xeno anatomy. The exposition, I think, works better here because it is more so an investigation and a conversation with both internal and external dialogue rather than paragraphs of the entity just explaining how the universe works because humanity is too stupid to figure it out. As far as I can tell, either that or I missed it somehow. We don't currently know who the human is besides being a biologist. No names were given, only occupations. It's probably someone connected to the government from the prologue, or maybe it's an independent investigator of sorts. Eventually, a deal was made with both parties regarding getting the samples they wanted. This book tonally is very much a mix of if the alien teacher from Assassination Classroom was this entity, but set in a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy universe. The conversations and comedy match that kind of vibe to me. In other words, I love it. Later, the biologist went home, put away the sample, and started planning for the upcoming day in the lab. When he woke up the next day, the sample was gone and the front door was wide open. While we don't know the biologist's name yet, we know of Rachel Kavanaugh, the person the biologist thinks stole the sample. She is a visitationist. This seems to be a fictional term to explain the people who worship these entities, a religion with some similarities to Christianity, except instead of Christ, it's a Xeno. The reason I think this is because the scenery heavily resembles a Baptist church. Pews, a pastor preaching at the pulpit, a front altar with symbolic rituals, church events, and the new Psalms of exegesis. I thought it said ex-Genesis when I first read it, but that's not right. And the new Psalms of exegesis instead of Psalms, Genesis, or Exodus. The passage even reads like a church hymnal. The dust kicked leaves dry enough to smoke, but ducks down, pants ragged and split. The sun bear's iron skin sails overhead, and the weak shut in sideways gets fit. The setter walked past the barn swallows, while the bitter drink brews and stews. The tired man ships the builder's plan. The kind one sees burning light fuse. The castle keeps a spire to frighten lay dead, as each watchdog fights in a row. The complex lies to the west under siege, as the younger crows eat the old sow. Pursuing yet overlooking, the sanctuary view is cast, as his inflammable vault is raised and buckled fast. But imagine like a whole congregation like speaking this, saying this. Rachel presented the sample to the church, but there was a problem. It was not kept at a specific cold temperature, so the sample was effectively ruined. This made the biologist livid. After the sample was opened, chaos ensued. Orange foam and sizzling solvent went everywhere in the church, causing a mass uproar of fear due to the air instantly being polluted. Also, didn't realize the biologist was a she until Rachel screamed at her. Maybe that wasn't clear, or maybe I assumed something from earlier, not sure. Anyways, one of the entities shows up and calls out Rachel for this mess, and we learn that the biologist's name is Leia.
Niall is a dirt mover, a working class person of America.
It seems like each chapter is focusing on a different perspective regarding how Americans are processing this invasion. Some attack it, while others ask it questions in conversation. It shows us how the invasion had to shift how people work. So Niall had to shift gears and become a nighttime security guard. This means a lot of idle time, so the author uses this opportunity to add more perspectives by using what I assumed to be the internet. Vastly different perspectives from various people, some of which are humorous, and apparently in the future the word silly becomes a slur. This chapter is basically social commentary on how people use the internet in social circles. Here we are introduced to the fear, a feeling of misery and anxiety. It bubbles up in Niall, and he either has a panic attack or he just mentally shuts down, stuck inside his own head, berating himself until he snaps out of it. As a person who has dealt with anxiety attacks and overthinking, this part of the chapter was very relatable. He sees an ad for some obscure medical service. It catches his attention after being stuck in his head for so long due to it directly relating to his current feelings. It convinces him to try it. At home, a topic that irks me comes up. Pre-AI cinema. I really hope we don't get to that point. Hopefully the AI bubble bursts in the next few years. That would be a good day. Niall Purdue then goes to Nirvana, the experimental medical treatment facility. This is a drug trial that supposedly lets you talk directly to your other self, a concept Niall found interesting since therapy did not work for him. But it does work, as he converses with himself in a blank white void. What follows are very funny out-of-pocket interactions that were hilarious. Think of the concept of the right brain versus the left brain, or logic versus emotion. Each person is the same, but it's a different mood or tone for each person. They can conjure anything they can think of, so the clone gets frustrated, summons a wall, and punches through it. Childhood trauma is then revealed, which connects to the clone's actions. The clone's actions also mirrors the prologue, where the army attacked the entity instead of conversating with it. Hey, you saw that thing. You saw how it moved, how it sounded. It had to go. You sat there doing nothing, so I took care of it like a man, like a child. I was trying to communicate with it, and you acted on complete impulse like a child. This is probably my favorite chapter of the book, the part where Niall has an intervention with himself. Instead of trying to decipher the entity, he is deciphering the complexity of himself. After this revelation of realizing his social anxiety was getting the best of him, he started talking to strangers, going to the gym, and even knocked on his neighbor's door. Cleaning his apartment no longer seemed like this humongous task. Hanging out with friends was fun again. But of course, I remembered what kind of book I was reading. Remember that Niall was a night guard after the one day off he got. The next day, he returned to work, and the wall he was supposed to protect had collapsed. As much as his walls of anxiety fell, the physical walls did also. Oh, that's such good symbolism. Oh my gosh, that's so good. This might still be my favorite story from this collection. Oh, I forgot about that ending. That's really good.
The way this first page is written is extremely direct.
Short sentences. Why say many word when few word do trick? My immediate inclination is that this perspective is from a gorilla in the zoo. Also, do you remember that one gorilla meme years ago?
Give orange, me give eat orange, me eat orange, give me eat orange, give me give eat orange, me eat orange, give me eat orange, give me give eat orange, me eat orange, give me eat orange, give me eat orange, give me eat orange, give me you.
That's kind of how this dialogue is written in this story, at least initially. Some sections of this chapter start exactly the same, detailing the monotony of a zoo animal. The longer this chapter goes on, the more detailed descriptions we get. It's revealed that this animal's rival is himself, not like the previous chapter, but regarding his reflection. This confuses him. Buttons help communicate with the animal and Tallbald, which I assume to be a human. This human watches over the animals and feeds them. This is their relationship. Jeff is the keeper of these animals. These animals turn out to be baboons, so I was close with my initial estimation. After this baboon learns enough English, they explain to him the situation they are in. Due to a phenomenon called BRCA factor, they are studying if they can trick a baboon brain into thinking like a human baby brain. Turns out they want to make this baboon a brand ambassador to help finance the park by getting more people to visit, a spectacle no other park has. It gets some engagement, albeit not all positive. However, the trade-off to this is that he can no longer have baboons as partners since he has become too human-like at this stage. This greatly upsets him. This is probably the most explicit chapter I've come across so far due to the nature of this baboon having a harem. If you know, you know. No, I will not elaborate any further. The through line of this chapter is the concept of dance monkey dance. The zoo puts Habibi, or as the baboon rather be called, Roman, on livestream multiple times. This led to live chat interaction, some live antics that would get anyone canceled, and finally leads to an interview with a popular influencer. It turns into a mental game of wits, which was hilarious. Eggs for Roman does this thing where it repeats a certain phrase. You're not sure why it does this, perhaps to commentate on how animals and even people can have certain priorities every single day, but no. Instead, this line concludes the chapter, and that is why the phrase was added throughout this chapter as a joke. Although it was a very funny yet humanly horrifying chapter, it's probably my least favorite of this book. Sure, we get mentions of Xenos, though they seem to not appear in this chapter. It's more so about how humans can treat animals, even when they act like humans. Good premise, but I don't think it's as impactful as, say, being a Nothingness or even Xeno. Not the strongest story, but it was still enjoyable.
Besides the foreword, this is the shortest chapter.
Here we get a list of doctor names, none of which I recognize, each from a different field of science. A bunch of these people enter a meeting room. Alpha is a through line throughout these stories. It's like the internet, but in the future. What are these 4 little words? Grass can feel pain. That's it. As it's revealed in this chapter, Xenos took away the nuclear weapons, honestly probably for the best. Who knew a conversation about grass would get so heated that nuclear weapons, that topic would come up. So what I think this chapter is trying to say is to think of life from the perspective of plants. We thought about life from the Xenos perspective and then an animal's perspective. Now we're thinking about life from a plant's perspective. Obviously humans are bigger than grass. We don't think much of grass. So what if it felt pain? The pure implication of that is wild. It mirrors the reflection from the humans and the Xenos. Humans are insignificant compared to the power of the Xenos, and grass is insignificant to humans.
A pest control worker had a love for the hunt.
However, the pest this man is after turns this into a dangerous game. In fact, the most dangerous game, if you read that in school like I did. The main conflict of our hunter is hunting those who take advantage of others, scammers and the like, and tonight an HOA member is his target. This story's tone is that of an undercover spy mission, a lot of internal dialogue. The hunter shoots his target with a dart and she fades into unconsciousness. He makes a scene in numerous ways to create a story for whoever finds the body. This is the most brutal chapter of the entire book. An assassin details exactly how he deals with the body. It is intense and probably my new least favorite part of the book due to how morbid the whole situation is. It's extremely bleak, yet the assassination is treated like any other day in the office. To put it bluntly, he decapitates his target and then uses it as a prop for his crime scene. Omega is revealed here. It is another version of the internet. The photos that were taken of the head were posted there. The assassin escapes the scene, but he has an interaction with the highway. Apparently, he took the cat with him. That is, after removing the tracking chip. Another job, except this time it was a trap. This results in a fight. Apparently the combatant was live streaming through his goggles, which meant that the chapter ended by his own audience controlling the combatant's mechanical arms and killing him on a live stream. Oh, now I understand the chapter title.
Anton hears voices from God.
What's interesting about this is the fact that in my last book review, this exact same topic came up. Also, yes, I know part 3 still isn't out. It will be released at some point when the time is right. A different man goes to a consulting agency. This person doubts Anton's abilities, even though Anton has used this power to game the system. Not 100% accurate all the time, but enough to get noticed by the right people. Wires connected to Anton as he's speaking with a disjointed combination of emotions all in rapid succession. A protagonist pushes a button to communicate with Anton. After Anton reveals that our protagonist is Nicholas West, along with some fun facts, the room darkens as Anton says this quote, "Danger at sunset, when the Golden West is nearly extinguished. Failure of the chain will lead to loss of liquid assets. When the time comes, make it known. A halo of angels is to blame." Essentially, this messenger of a god gives Nicholas a slip of paper with that quote on it, the equivalent to a bad fortune in Nicholas's eyes, as he is disappointed with the encounter. So no, Nicholas is not impressed with Anton. Instead, Nicholas goes back to work as if nothing happened. Alpha's chatbot is called a gape, and we know that Alpha is a term for one of the sectors of the future of the internet. Omega is the darker side of the web, so Alpha is the more common accessible way to access the internet. We've seen the term Alpha throughout these stories, and of course, they would have a chatbot, and this chatbot is named a gape. The company Nicholas works for is attempting to decipher Nicholas's fortune or prophecy, and this place is a tech agency, meaning Nicholas is a suit on a high floor. When he isn't working for the 1%, he's at home with his dog. After checking all possible liquid assets that the prophecy could allude to, he went to sleep. Nicholas goes to his cybersecurity job the next morning, then goes home after work to his dog. This cycle repeats. That is, until his dog starts vomiting. The dog got into an Amniota biosporgira, aka Eastern North American Destroying Angel. Weird name. Where have I heard that before? Oh no. Nicholas rushes Sargon to the vet. The antidote is at another vet clinic, so after 30 minutes the antidote arrives. But it's too late. The next day, Nicholas is furious as he storms into where Anton resides, Delphi. He tries to get Anton, but he is escorted out after attempting to essentially break into Anton's room. Even his work gave him bereavement leave in light of his dog, but more likely due to the scene he caused. Nicholas gets so fed up with the silence that he puts on scrimpcore. I wonder what kind of genre that is. A situation from earlier now ties into how Anton knew about this dog. I'm not going to reveal it here, but man, it was a good surprise. I gotta leave something a mystery. Let's just say that while the last story was about an assassin dealing with scammers, this story was about a civilian dealing with a scammer. And man, that ending, literal poetic justice. Super satisfying ending. In retrospect, Alpha, or the Freenet, is not only part of the internet, but it even has its own music. This isn't the only time where someone has used Alpha while in a not mentally sound state. Nicholas's depression relating to the absence of his dog is being numbed by Alpha, the internet.
Cade and a new protagonist are a duo.
What kind of duo? Ones who are obsessed with judging people and infrasound. Cade lets Lucas try this futuristic music listening device where you can feel the music throughout your very being. This story is where the formatting shifts. We get a clear representation of how Lucas's song goes. Like, I can literally hear the song in my head. Lucas, a student, is obsessed with music. He bought one of these music devices for himself, which turns out has a bunch of mood settings. Lucas and Cade were obsessed with this specific machine, that it's all they wanted to do. In case it wasn't obvious, the subtext in the story is that this device is essentially the futuristic new drug that the kids are using. Teachers are concerned, but students don't see it as an issue. It's like the next vape. Essentially, after so many hits, you need something stronger, so Lucas goes to a black market of sorts. Here, he gets a custom song that hits even harder. This story basically answers the question, what if music was a drug? It's so addictive that it literally kills Cade. So addictive that even the death of his friend couldn't shake Lucas from using it all the time. Lucas wore the device so much that he lost his hair, his scalp started to get infected, and it ruined his life. Weirdly enough, the ending of the story is morbidly beautiful. As Lucas does one last trip, in many symbolic ways, in his car, a chorus of frogs sing their own song. This moment was just perfect irony.
So we're done, right? Well, nope. Because now the author talks about his own stories that we just talked about. And this is where my criticism starts to, well, arise.
In the Fiat Strepitus section, which literally means, well, in Latin, fiat means let it be done. However, in English, it means authoritative order, and strepitus means in Latin for making noise, but in English, it's characterized by much noise. So this chapter literally means a noisy authoritative order, which describes the Xenos pretty well, not just for their sound barrier eruptions, but their literal decree to humanity. So while that's clever and good, what's stupid and bad is the first paragraph. Page 249. You don't have to explain the aliens because that's how you get that exposition dump of a story, which isn't good storytelling. You went from showing to all of a sudden telling. Why not imply as needed? Why lore dump in the prologue? I was gonna save this for the conclusion, but since we're already here, I feel like my main gripe with this book is the prologue. We get all this super vivid imagery that plants this invasion in mystery. However, midway through, it turns into a literal exposition dialogue session between the literal monster and the humans. Personally, I would have cut the prologue off right after the entity started walking. and then take parts of the dialogue segment and sprinkle it through the stories. Kind of like in the baboon story, how there was only one mention of the Xeno in one line, but it added to our understanding of the monster. Basically, cut the prologue short, or honestly, don't even add it in the book. It weighs the overall book down so much, making it the worst story out of this collection. The foreword was a better prologue, if that makes sense. While the prologue was the strongest negativity I felt about the entire book, the rest of the story notes were fine. The Xenos notes had commentary about organized religion, a topic I'm all too familiar with, his inspiration to other stories that inspired Being and Nothingness. Eggs for Roman was only one of two stories in this collection where it is written in first person, present tense. Four Little Words has one sentence, which was a pretty funny revelation. Bloodstreams was the least relevant to the overall plot of the through line, according to the author. The Prophet notes confirm that John Wick was a direct inspiration because Dead Dog, and says that this story is the weakest link, though I'd argue it's actually one of the strongest because it details the daily life of a man in the future who deals with tech, depression, death, revenge, and religion, set up as a slice of life dramedy mystery thriller. Plus, the twist was the best reveal out of anything in this book. It was definitely better than the prologue, and finally, yes, Beat is about addiction, and is a retrospective about the author's struggle with addiction, and near the time of the author publishing this book, he is sober. So honestly, good for him.
Better late than never, but I just realized that I've been referring to these stories as chapters rather than, short stories.
This is because although it's an anthology, there are certain through lines and connections that actually make this a cohesive story. Alpha, Omega, the Freenet, religion, Xenos, tech, and that sort of stuff. This is like Black Mirror in book form. The social commentary of our current climate while telling stories in the future that's all about how our technology will be the downfall of us as a species if unchecked, unmoderated, unregulated. Especially that last story. I love this book. The deeper we dive into this book, the more it paints humans as the true monster. The Americans attacked the Xenos, though the Xeno was the one who started this conflict by destroying cities and was only using self-defense. Humans can use animals to their advantage, even for entertainment. Humans don't even consider the grass they stand on unless it inconveniences them. Humans can kill other humans, especially in the most brutal of ways. So, we've seen multiple instances of humans attempting to take advantage of a situation for the human's gain, even in spite of the damage they cause another entity, human or not. The Xenos literally take away all the nuclear weapons to prevent more human suffering and even extinction. The Xenos' mission is the exact opposite of humanity's actions. Oh, this is so good.
However, this review is not done. In 2080, I will review this book once again to see if it aged great, if it aged poorly. People love those kinds of videos, right? To see if any of these things actually come to pass. All right, now that we're done talking about this book, I could talk about the best upcoming indie games because the Next Fest just happened and... Wait, what's that? What do you mean another comedic animated YouTuber made a thing that wasn't an animation? That's just